either people out there which is going, oh thank God they're here, or there's no one. Well, there's no one. Which leads to me and my God thing. I know. Well, I'll talk to you about God in a minute. Here is a more. Why not 100%? Our trade for oil has compromised our currency. 100% tax on gas would give us jobs and keep the price of oil low by increasing consumption. 100% tax on gas. Was that like whatever you pay, you put an extra thing on top? There's a question.
I don't see a question there.
Well, yesterday there was a story in the local newspaper about all of the last quarter profits of all the oil companies. They have all had record profits. ExxonMobil had something like $14 billion in a single quarter. And all the oil companies are making hundreds of billions of dollars in profits. They were basically gouging the American people through a period that lasted about 6 months and drove up the price to $4 a gallon in some places. The truth of the matter is that we have to make a transition away from reliance on oil and all hydrocarbon-based energies to protect the planet, but also to protect our economy. So our economy right now is so dependent on oil that we are locked into a level of consumption that's very destructive. And this is one, it affects our international policy, it affects our energy policies because alternative energy isn't adequately funded.
Is that
the problem with relying on that is that it inevitably drives up the price of food. And so that's a difficulty. Because it's more energy to me, it's a bridge technology. You can't rely on it as being where you're going to stop. It's a way to get, it's a path away from reliance on oil. But the problem is that heavy use of ethanol as a fuel is creating distortions in agricultural markets and driving up the price of food. And that's really serious for people, not just in this country, but in other countries as well. So ethanol is just it's a temporary fix.
Okay. The credit crunch recently, what do you feel caused that? I mean, we kind of feel that it's to do with the mortgages, but can you explain the cause of this, and what do you think should have been done at the bailout? Because I know that you have...
Well, I voted against the bailout, and the reason... let me just answer the question directly about the credit crunch. We have a debt-based economy. All of us are familiar with that. Most of us are at the level where our debts exceed our assets. So the government did not monitor the activities going on in Wall Street. They didn't monitor the housing bubble as it was building. Matter of fact, they helped to fuel it by doing a couple of things. First of all, they changed the laws. In 1999, they passed what's called the Financial Modernization Act, which took controls off of Wall Street that was to protect against the kind of speculation that followed. Once those, after the Depression, the laws were changed in this country, so the kind of speculation that led to the Depression was made illegal. Banks were making a lot of money in this. They were loaning money, and for people who had no documentation, low documentation loans, and people were getting into homes, getting in over their head. They would get rates of mortgages that they couldn't possibly pay. They were into adjusted rate mortgages that once they got adjusted, they couldn't pay. They were in jumbo mortgages. When they get adjusted, they're not going to be able to pay. All of a sudden, people couldn't pay their mortgages. So the banks then end up in trouble because they're running on a debt-based system. They weren't able to cover their own costs and debts. So the banks start to get in trouble, and then Wall Street starts to get in trouble. Now, we are right now in a position where there's only one way that America's going to recover itself financially, and that is that the government's going to have to take control over these mortgage-backed securities that have traded 20, 30, 40 times the actual value of the underlying assets. They're going to have to get control and work out loan modifications for maybe 10 million American homeowners to keep people in their homes, lower the interest, lower the principal, extend the terms of the payment. People will pay back, they'll have to, but if they're forced to pay, at the time that it's due, you're going to have more people defaulting on their mortgages. So this is the core problem that we have in our economy. And the government let this speculation go on. They should have stopped it. The Fed looked the other way. Alan Greenspan was in front of our committee the other day saying he could have never imagined that this was going to happen. Think about this. He presided over a growth of our debt from like $11 trillion in 1987 to $43 trillion in 2007, public and private debt. It was growing like topsy, and they let it happen because everybody was making a lot of money, but no one ever thought, what happens if this thing's burst? What about the underlying value? So you go to neighborhoods in Cleveland where you have the epicenter of the subprime. I took Eddie over there earlier in some of the neighborhoods where you see all these homes boarded up. Wherever you live, there's homes in your neighborhood where the homes have been foreclosed and maybe they've been going to auction. The values go down. All of our property values in Northern Ohio have gone down by at least 20%, in some places 30%. So whether you're caught in this or not, you're affected by it, which is why we have to create a fix, because everybody's value is starting to drop, and sometimes it's dropping below the threshold of what it was years ago. You have a reasonable expectation that when you put your money and you invest in a home, that you're going to get X amount for it. You don't think you're going to get less than you put into it. That's not supposed to happen, but it's happening in some areas because the bottom's falling out. So, what needs to be done is this. We need to keep people in their homes. We have to have a jobs program where we put millions of people back to work, rebuilding the units. This is what happened. The cop went off the beat. Let me give you some examples. The Fed, it's a colossal disaster. And so we have to take a totally different approach to policy in so many different ways.
What was the difference between the first bailout deal and the second one that got voted in? The first one didn't go. The first vote didn't happen, the second vote did.
Well, the first, it was a surprise because a lot of Democrats voted against the first one, and then they made it a kind of a party loyalty question, and the Democrats pushed for it. The Republican Party opposed the bailout. Most Republicans opposed the bailout at the beginning, but then there were enough Democrats to defeat it the first time around. But then the Democrats, many Democrats who voted against it the first time, they were switched the second time because the leaders of our party said, look, we need this. We need this to win the election.
What was the difference in the bill? Was there no difference at all?
No, it was worse. The second bill was much worse. The second bill had things like subsidies for wooden arrows for children, and there's a whole tax relief bill that shoved into it.
This wooden arrows for children. What?
I'm not sure. I never really understood that myself.
Because you like to read all the.
I read these bills, okay? People ask me why I voted against education. And I read the bill. So but what happens is they'll plop a 1,000-page bill on the desk just a few minutes before the debate. And unless you took an Evelyn Wood speed reading course.
I tried that. I bought the book, but I couldn't get through the book. I was trying to get through it. I was reading it too slowly. But I had to do this and do. Because I have dyslexia, so I read. Well, I didn't finish the book. I'm waiting for the audio book.
Audio speed reading book.
Seriously, I bought it. I've been trying to do speed reading ever since I read the Kennedy story. Oh, you can do speed reading. What's those things? So, the bill, no difference. What the second one was? Oh yeah, the second one was the arrows in the case.